Well, very happy Friday morning to everyone, and welcome to the John Quintero Show on YouTube. We appreciate you joining us each and every segment. Next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'll get underway at 10 o'clock. And we got a great guest coming up here momentarily. Before we get rolling, I just want to send out my heartfelt thoughts and prayers to all the folks up in the Los Angeles area. Having to sit around the last 3+ days and watch the devastating fires taking out homes right and left, very, very difficult to watch, and let alone all those folks that have lost their homes, lost everything they've owned. Our sincere prayers and, hang in there. Hang in there. It can only get better from there. But very, very sad to watch what we've had to watch since Tuesday night. With that, we're going to get to our guest. Now, when I got off the air on Monday, shortly after, I got off at about 10:45. At 11 o'clock, the story broke that Sheila Seidler, Peter Seidler's widow, had sued two of her brothers for control of the San Diego Padres. Breach of basically Peter Seidler's trust, fiduciary responsibilities weren't adhered to, according to Sheila Seidler, along with fraud. I mean, those are devastating charges against family members. And I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know who's right. I don't know who's wrong. We're not here to judge either side. We'll let the courts do that. But definitely wanted to get the opinion of this gentleman joining us right now. We're going to talk a lot of baseball with him. National baseball writer Scott Miller joins us on the John Quintero Show here on YouTube. And Scotty, welcome and a very happy New Year to you. And I know all the years that you've been out here in Southern California, you spent a lot of time up in that Los Angeles area. And boy, since Tuesday night, it's been very, very difficult to watch TV for any length of time.
Yeah.
Just so sad.
Yeah, it's unspeakable. You're watching and it's just horror everywhere you look and just all the best to everybody up in Los Angeles that's going through this. I mean, I know several years ago, we've been through our share of fires in San Diego where, not it doesn't look like, I'm no fire expert, but boy, it's hard to imagine anything worse than what's going on in Los Angeles right now. But you live in Southern California, it just becomes part of your life that you hope it doesn't, but this stuff happens. It's like tornadoes in the Midwest and hurricanes in the Southeast. Wherever you live, Mother Nature is going to have a say, and you just hope to avoid it as best you can. And you just hope and pray for those people up in Los Angeles right now.
All right, let's get into the Padres. And I want to get into Preller here in a few minutes, but I want to hit this lawsuit right out of the gate. My take on this, number one, I was shocked, surprised, dismayed, and saddened more than anything else because, right now, we don't know where this organization is headed. We didn't even know where this organization was really headed prior to finding out Sheila Seidler was filing this lawsuit against two of her husband's brothers for fiduciary breaches, allegedly, and fraud. And she wants control of the Padres. They're saying that she was never supposed to have control of the Padres. And I know you've talked to a lot of people this week about this situation. Well, what are you hearing right now?
Well, we weren't the only ones that were surprised on Monday morning. Everybody in the Padres organization was shocked. I mean, I don't know. I haven't talked the very, very, very top of the Padres organization. I don't know if there were a couple people that knew this was coming or not, but for the most part, it blindsided everybody with the Padres, the public, Major League Baseball, everybody. So, where it goes from here, it's hard to say. As you said, the lawsuit's been filed. So legally, I'm certainly no lawyer. I mean, you hear this, you hear that. I don't, we'll let the courts figure that out, unless the best case scenario for me would be if the family can, come to an agreement before it goes to trial. But, it's sad because, I mean, how many times do you hear this just among regular civilians, right? I mean, mom and dad dies or whatever. and then the kids are left to trust, and then becomes a big family feud. I mean, you hear this over and over and over, disagreements about, oh no, my parents meant to leave me this, no, they left you that. And and then the money factor, obviously, in any aspect of life, it's always follow the money. The money's what seems to always cause disruption and anger and fighting. But the problem is, it's such a normal part of life in a lot of trusts, and it's sad. But then when it becomes an issue on a level like this in sports, obviously it's high profile, and there's no hiding anything. So, it goes from there. And, it's not unprecedented. I mean, the Orioles went through this when one of Peter Angelos' sons sued the other one and his mother back in 2023. We've seen it in other cases, and it just has to play out.
Well, let me throw this out at you. The thing that, number one, this is going to probably take some time. This is not going to get handled by spring training or probably opening day, or who knows, it may go into, the 2026 season. We'll have to wait and see on that. But there's a lot of factors here. It isn't just, who's got control of the Padres. Is that limiting what decisions A.J. Preller can make? Also, you've got a lot of competent people working in the Padre business side. You've got a lot of people on the baseball side. And even though they don't want to get involved in this, let's say, and I don't know if people have already drawn their line in the sand on whose side they want to see run this ball club. Now, the players may have. I don't know about that, and we'll get to that in a minute. But if you're in the inner workings of the Padres right now in the front office, you got to walk a really fine line, because you really don't know who's going to be running this ball club in the future. And if you go on one side and the other side wins, you may be out of a job.
That's a lot of what happened up in Los Angeles when Frank and Jamie McCourt owned the Dodgers, and then they got divorced, and Frank ended up with the team. And there were some Dodgers people that, picked the wrong horse. They thought Jamie was going to end up with the team. And then those people before long were out of a job. So again, this isn't unprecedented, but to your point, you have to walk that very fine line. I mean, the best thing, you can do, I think, if you work for the Padres, is just you do your job, you keep your blinders on, you do what you're responsible for doing today and tomorrow and each day. And, all you can do right now, I mean, they named John Seidler as the controlling partner right before Christmas. As of right now, until the court changes anything, he is the guy.
But he hasn't been approved, Scotty, yet by Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and that's a great point. That has to happen soon. I assume he will be approved, only because usually by the time a family or an ownership group names a control person publicly, usually the behind the scenes machinations have happened, and you name him publicly knowing you have the support of the commissioner and the other owners. But you're right, there's no guarantee. So he has to be approved. So theoretically that would happen sometime between now and spring training, at the next owners meetings, or if they call a special meeting. And so for right now, back to, if you're working for the Padres, John Seidler, you follow what he says right now, but then the next step is he has to be approved by the other owners, and then that either happens or doesn't. If it happens, well, then, okay, the Padres have a little bit of clarity in that he's the guy for the next however long until this family feud dissipates, or the suit plays out in court. But there's all kinds of trickiness and all kinds of layers of complications here.
What's really interesting to me is you've got all these brothers, the Seidler brothers. And the one guy that actually works for the team, Tom Seidler, who does a great job working for the Padres, that does a lot of great community events. He gets out there and pressures the flesh and goes to a lot of fundraisers and is always waving the Padres banner. We haven't heard anything about him. He wasn't mentioned in the lawsuit. Neither was John
Right.
Seidler, but these other two brothers were mentioned. And Tom Seidler continues to work for the ball club and do a great job.
Right. And yet, I mean, yeah, when they named before Christmas John Seidler as the controlling owner, I mean, that got your attention immediately because to your point, to my knowledge, the other brothers haven't really been around the Padres. I haven't seen any of them at Petco Park. I haven't met
You even
any of
heard
them.
about them.
No, I didn't even know most of their names. But Peter obviously was there and Tom was there. And all of a sudden after Peter passes, all these other brothers that you either never heard of or barely heard of, all of a sudden they come into the mix and you're like, well, wait a minute. I mean, Peter Seidler, obviously bought the team, he and Ron Fowler took over and going back to late 2013. And so we're talking 11 or 12 years now. And Peter and Tom have been the two Seidlers who have been around the team in 11 or 12 years. The other brothers you haven't heard a thing of. And all of a sudden, John is controlling owner and it's, again, weird things happen as we know. I'm sure you've had friends. I've had friends. Everybody listening and watching has had friends who either have gone through some kind of ugliness in an inheritance situation, or they know of somebody who's gone through ugliness with siblings. And this is the kind of stuff where, again, on just a normal, lunch bucket Joe everyday life, this is the kind of stuff that causes siblings to stop talking to each other and things like that. Sadly, now we're up here at this high level, as I say, in professional sports where, stuff gets blown out into the open. And sadly, when it turns ugly, that stuff, it does not get hidden.
Okay, a couple of things. I do want to get to AJ here in a minute.
Yeah.
But, Sheil Seidler apparently in this lawsuit, 97 pages, by the way, for the fans out there, there's been talk about moving the Padres. You know what? I call poo-poo on that. There's no way the Padres are getting moved. I don't care if they sold the ball club, they brought in a new owner. They're not going anywhere. There's a variety of reasons for it. Number one, they got one of the best ballpark, if not the best ballpark in the big leagues. They're filling that thing up even on Monday and Tuesday nights. And they also can't go anywhere for a number of years because of the deal with the city.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring this point up because I've heard similar, and people are already speculating, oh, the Padres could move. And you're right. If I'm not mistaken, part of the deal with the city locks them in. I think it's through 2034. So I think that's the year date. So they're certainly not moving before then. And I think they have it going good enough now. I don't see. I think I agree with you. I think this speculation that, oh my gosh, this could mean the Padres could move. I don't see that either, because the city's involved and et cetera, et cetera. I think the more likely scenario is it could force a sale of the team if they can't all get to, if the Seidler family can't get together and get this ironed out. Because I think the Seidler family owns, I believe it's 45% of the team, and that's split among the various siblings. So it's not as if there's one person, hey, I own 50% of the team or 51% of the team. So what I say goes, in other words, there's a lot of money people involved here in the ownership group. And while the Seidlers are the owners and the majority owners, they own 45%. That's not 51%, so what they say goes. But the thing is, if they can't get together on this, and the lawsuit takes a bunch of turns, or however it plays out, I don't know if any one sibling's in position to buy the other four siblings out, or how all that goes. So I think I'm not sitting here today saying the Padres will be sold, but hopefully it works out. I know Sheil has said the plan is to keep the team in the family's hands for a long, long time. And we all hope that, the best case for the Seidlers, for the city of San Diego, for Padres fans everywhere, we hope whatever the best case is, where things calm down and there's continuity and there's calmness. Hopefully all that works out. If it doesn't, then I think selling the team, a team sale is a very distinct possibility, but I agree with you. I don't see, come on, let's not talk yet about they're going to move.
Scott, the 45%, the way I've got Shield was left 25%. And then there's another 20% that the brothers and whoever else is involved. So she actually has the highest percentage from what I've gathered at this point.
Yeah, I think that that's accurate, and so certainly she has clout within the team, the organization. Even if, as she says, the brothers are trying to push her out, if she owns more than they do, but again, you need to become you need to be a lawyer and a businessman and an accountant to understand all of this, because I mean, she owns the majority, but owning 25% of the team, I don't think that's a big enough majority to where she could just muscle everybody else out of the way.
I would like to be able to sit down with guys like Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Xander Bogaerts, Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, who my wife she saw him yesterday at a local bar. And she goes, I was starstruck. I was going to go up and say something to him, but I couldn't. He goes, man, he's really tall. And I go, oh, yeah, he's a good guy and a hardworking guy. But I'd like to know what their thoughts are.
Good posture, too. Good posture. He stands straight.
Oh, yeah.
He's tall. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We could only hope. But I wonder what those guys are thinking right now, because they've signed long-term deals with Peter Seidler and Shield. Seidler over the last couple of years, even before Peter passed, started becoming a little bit more of a frequent member at the ballpark and down on the field. I think he's very, very well liked, and we don't know the other guys. I mean, I know Tom Seidler, but I don't know any of the other brothers. But I wonder what the players are thinking right now.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right, Shield. I thought it was charming pregame during the playoffs in October, during the Dodgers series. Shield was down on the field during batting practice, and I mean, she wasn't really doing interviews, but she was chatting with people and players, but not just players, some media people and just some whoever was down there. She seemed to be becoming comfortable in her role as an owner. I thought she was really lit up by the love and the outpouring during October that people had for Peter Seidler, the signs, let's win it for Peter, stuff like that. I think that made her feel real good, and she was on the field, and it was charming to see her start to mix in a little bit after the tragedy she had lived through, losing her husband. And you're right. We don't know who the other guys are. I mean, I've never, other than Tom Seidler, I haven't met any of the other brothers. And like I say, to my knowledge, none of them have been around. So you can't help but the way Shield has kind of conducted herself since losing her husband, at least around the ballpark. You can't help but be charmed by her and impressed by her and kind of root for her. To your question of the players, I would imagine, can't say for sure, but I'd imagine they feel similar. They've all met her. I doubt if they've met any of the other Seidler brothers. But you're always, whatever, their familiarity kind of breeds comfort, right? Whatever you're familiar with, you're more comfortable in that than you are in the unknown. And so I would think the players, being familiar with Shield, would be comfortable, especially given the way her husband ran the business. So I think, the players, I mean, I don't know. Ultimately, they adjust. I mean, it's like when a manager gets fired, right? I mean, you might have liked the other guy, but you got to adjust. And, ultimately they're more worried about themselves and their own careers than they are anything else. But that said, the familiarity, familiarity I mentioned with Shield. I have no doubt that the players have strong affinity for her, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're rooting for her to, to stay in control.
All right, let's get to AJ Preller. AJ has been relatively quiet. He was able to avoid arbitration with everyone except Michael King, and we'll see where that ends up. They're about $1.5 million apart right now. But he came to agreement with a bunch of guys, but they haven't been active at all in free agency. They haven't made any trades. And earlier when we were talking about this lawsuit that came down on Monday, we were going, well, did anybody really know about it? Well, maybe AJ Preller and people were aware of it because they've been it's been crickets for the Padres this offseason. They're right where they're at now when free agency opened. They need a left fielder, they need a starting catcher, they probably need 2 pitchers. They'd probably like to fortify that bullpen, add bench strength. And to this point, they've signed some guys on minor league deals, roster filler type guys, depth pieces to the organization. I mean, what do you think about what AJ's thinking right now?
Yeah, I mean, he's his life has to be way more complicated now after this suit as well. You're right. We're accustomed to AJ making all kind of moves every off season, and it has been crickets. I think part of it tells me that I mean, at least one of my reads into this is the importance of Roki Sasaki, right? I think, I mean, I'm not saying they're just waiting and doing nothing like, well, let's see if we get Roki or not. But I think he's a huge part of their offseason hopes and plans. And he's supposed to sign by January 23rd or whatever. So it'll be interesting if the Padres, whether they sign him or don't. I would expect a flurry of moves right after that because, there's not that much time left to finish building their team before spring training starts. I mean, we're talking now just a little over a month or so away. So, how hamstrung AJ is, it's hard to say. I know the projections going into this offseason were that the Padres payroll will be about what it was last year, maybe even up a little bit, but they weren't talking about slashing it. Now, the question is, with all this family drama, as I said, there were no indications that this was coming at all before Monday. I mean, it was like a bombshell out of the blue. Now, the question is the talk of the team payroll, where it's supposed to be about what it was last year or a little bit above. Now that this bombshell is dropped with the family, is the second shoe to drop that we're also going to whack some payroll. I don't think that'll happen that quickly. Because this year, I mean, Padres just announced, was it yesterday or this morning? I think yesterday that, their season tickets are sold out. This is a 3rd year in a row they've sold out their allotment of season tickets. So, I think it'll be business as usual this year. I would be a little concerned next year if they're going to start cutting costs based on the family stuff. I think this year probably will be business as usual, which again means AJ has a lot of work to do. And it probably starts with where does Roki Sasaki end up signing? And is this family drama going to scare him away from the Padres? I think that's a concern.
I want to get back to Roki Sasaki here in a minute, but I do want to mention Luis Arraez yesterday in arbitration. Got $14 million. Dylan Cease, $13.75 million. Those are the 2 highest guys in arbitration.
Yep.
Those guys are very affordable for other teams. Okay, both of those guys in their final year of arbitration. I'm going to ask you right now, opening day for the San Diego Padres, will Dylan Cease and Luis Arraez make it in a Padre uniform on opening day, or do you think they're going to have a different address?
I hate the prediction questions. I'm bad at predictions, but you're right. I mean,
that's $28 million you can get rid of.
That's right. And I'm not saying either one of those players is Juan Soto, but you go back to that Juan Soto trade where AJ got 4 players from the Yankees, and Michael King, and I mean he did really well. I think they won the Juan Soto trade. So I'm not saying Cease or Arraez are Juan Soto, but not just you could get rid of 28 million, but if you turn Luis Ariz into maybe 2 or 3 players that can help you, Dylan Cease into 2 or 3 players who can help you, then that might be the way to go. It's interesting because going into the winter meetings, there's a lot of Dylan Cease rumors about they're talking trade with him, and now it's after the holidays, it's become crickets again. Luis Ariz, I know there was some chatter about talks with the Yankees again. Speaking of Juan Soto, that the Yankees were looking at Ariz and talking with AJ. So we'll see how this plays out. I don't know if this is a conservative route, but to your question, one of the two are not with the Padres. I just think both are prime candidates to be traded. I don't know if they'll trade both, but let's say one of the two is traded and one of the two is with the team on opening day.
There have been a couple of articles written recently about Fernando Tatis Jr. possibly in talks with Boston. And I came on the show on Monday and I was apoplectic. I mean, there's not a guy that I enjoy watching in a Padre uniform more than Fernando. And I talked about he can run. He's got a cannon arm. I mean, you come to the ballpark to watch him. Not only could he steal bases, but he could hit a triple. He could hit an inside the park home run, or he could throw out a guy from the warning track at third base. I mean, I just wish and pray that we could see this guy stay in the lineup to play not 162 games, but play 150 games. I'd love to see the numbers he'd put up.
I agree. And I thought since maybe his second year in the majors, that's been the challenge, right? Because his rookie year, he had some injuries. Second year, he had some injuries. And, this stress reaction in the
two different times.
Yeah, that's a concern for me. I mean, what is he, 25 or mid 20s? I mean, that's just not normal for 25-year-olds it's not normal for most 25-year-olds. And let me qualify, most 25-year-old professional athletes, because that's what we're talking here. I'm not talking about the, 25-year-old that, is your son sitting on the couch, but professional athlete. It's not normal for a 25-year-old to have even one stress reaction at that age in a bone, let alone two. So, I mean, the suspension for steroids, you have to wonder, has some of that stuff bulked him up too much and done some premature damage to the body to where it's just going to be a lingering thing over the years? That's a question I think you have to wonder. I'm certainly not accusing him of anything. Or, I mean, obviously the steroid suspension is out there and, in full public view. Hopefully he's on the straight and narrow since then. And, again, all I'm saying is we know the steroid thing is a fact, and you worry about the injuries he's had and if there's a tie to that. Because I agree with you. Tatis is unlike almost any other player we've ever seen come along. Love him, everything you said. You can't keep your eyes off him. I mean, whether he's in the batter's box, whether he's legging out a double or triple, whether he's stealing a base, throwing somebody out from right field, all of it. Fabulous. And I'm with you. If he can just stay on the field, it would be marvelous to see what he could do.
All right, we're going to shift gear. We're going to talk about the Los Angeles Dodgers. They've signed everybody and anybody they've wanted to this offseason. I mean, I've never seen an offseason for a ball club. They signed free agents. They re-signed their own guys. They extended guys that they had. And now they're going after Roki Sasaki. And the other thing that's interesting about that, and I know the Padres are definitely in the running for him, but apparently the story out there is the Dodgers have talked to all the guys that they were planning on signing the international signing period for 2025 and talked to them about, hey, can you sign in 2026? They're trying to save every nickel and penny to throw it at Roki Sasaki. And at the end of the day, everybody's pretty much, I think, on the even playing field on what they can give this guy initially.
Yeah, I mean, give the Dodgers credit for being creative on so many fronts. I mean, it goes back to when they signed Shohei Ohtani, right? And he ended up deferring so much of his money till later so that they left them money to sign other guys. And now what you just laid out, Sasaki on the international market, the Dodgers right now have it going on so many levels. I mean, they've got as smart a front office as there is in the game. They've got as creative a front office as there is in the game. Andrew Friedman and his assistants. They've got an ownership that remains all in. They've got a great culture in that clubhouse. And that's another reason I think so many guys are signing there. Led by Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, they don't just target talented players, but they target talented players who are also team players and players who have a burning desire to win and who will do anything to win. They don't, I look at the Dodgers, I don't see a selfish player in that clubhouse. I don't see a player with too big of an ego in that clubhouse. The culture they have is spectacular right now. And we should mention, our North County neighbor, Dave Roberts, gets huge credit for facilitating that culture. It's basically what happens when you have synergy in an organization. Andrew Friedman and his staff, they target the right players. Even trading for Tommy Edman last year. I mean, that's one of those trades that everybody kind of overlooks. But Tommy Edman, another local kid, La Jolla Country Day. You know what he's about. He's everything I said a little bit ago. Winner, no ego, do whatever it takes to win, fits in great. And the Dodgers are so skilled at that. Andrew Friedman and his staff target those kind of players. And then once they arrive, Dave Roberts is wonderful at facilitating and maintaining that culture. And, the fact that they're spending a gazillion dollars, they've got that culture, and they're winning, and they win every year. It's why every player wants to play it for the Dodgers.
Scott, yeah, I want to ask you about three players here, and really appreciate the time as always. I always get fired up when I know you're coming on. You and I spent so many nights at the ballpark talking ball, and we know a lot of people in the game and get some great information. But Nolan Arenado has been one of my favorite players. I think he's as good a third baseman as I've ever seen defensively. And I know last year in St. Louis, he didn't put up the big number, hit 16 home runs and hit about 272. And, it was a subpar year for him. It's been pretty much noted they'd like to move him. He turned down the deal to Houston. There's been rumors he could go in a package to Boston, but he's holding out. He wants to come back to Southern California. No, I don't think he wants to take the place of Anthony Rendon at third base for the Angels. I think he wants to definitely play for the Dodgers. And what do you think? Do you think that could be worked out? Could he end up with the Dodgers? What do you think is going to happen with Arenado?
Well, based on everything I just said about the Dodgers and, the way they go about things, I would never say never. Yes, it could be worked out with the Dodgers. If there's a desire on both sides, I would think they get it done. The question is, Dodgers have Max Muncy at third base right now. Not that they're wedded to him forever. But, you saw just last week or this week, they traded Gavin Lux to Cincinnati after they signed the Korean second baseman. So even guys that you think the Dodgers, they've come up in their own system, that you think they're a part of their plans, when the Dodgers think they can upgrade or do some things, they do them. And that includes trading Gavin Lux to Cincinnati. So, might they maybe trade Max Muncy or figure out a way to open up third base for Arenado? I mean, if they want to badly enough, I think they will. It'd be an interesting fit. I mean, obviously Arenado's a little bit of an older player. Not quite what he once was, but everything I just said about that culture, I think he fits. Good guy, wants to win, team first guy, not too big of an ego. I think he'd fit in very well there, and it would be an interesting match if it would happen.
I've met him one time. He was Buddy Black introduced me after a ball game one night to him. And, from what I know about Arenado, he is really, really hard on himself. He beats himself up if he has a bad ball game.
Yeah, and I would say probably he's too hard on himself. I think that's maybe one of his detriments. And you can't say he has many. I mean, he's a great player. He's an all-star. But, it's almost, he reminds me of, Coach, when, the book I co-authored with Bob Tewksbury, 90% Mental, on the mentals part of the game. One of Tewksbury's things he preaches to players, and, it makes a lot of sense, is that, perfectionism, trying to be perfect, can be deadly because none of us are perfect. And it's almost like if that's your, if, I mean, so many times, and you've heard it and I've heard it, people say almost admiringly, like, man, that guy, he's a perfectionist. But Tewksbury's take, which I learned in writing 90% Mental, and I agree, is that you're almost setting yourself up for failure if you're a perfectionist, because nobody is going to be perfect. And if you've got to be able to handle an error here or a mistake there, I mean, obviously nobody wants to make them, but if you're a perfectionist, you set yourself up for failure, because if you beat yourself up too much about, I made an error in the 5th inning, and in the 7th inning, you're still brooding about it, you're just, it's going to get worse and worse. Obviously, Arenado's not that. I mean, it's not like one error leads to another, but he does beat himself up quite a bit. And that's why I say probably to his detriment, because, I thought in the mental skills game, what Tewksbury preaches about perfectionism, I completely agree with it, about, you're setting yourself up for failure, because, you need to try to do the best you can, but then be able to move on.
All right, 2 more players. Now I want you to tell me about the book you got coming out, because I'm going to be one of the first guys that sign up to get that book. I can tell you that. Hey, Tanner Scott, Padre reliever they got from the Marlins, was unbelievable last year, as good as anybody in baseball. Where do you think he's headed?
It's a good question. I mean, he's still out there. A lot of relievers are still out there. They haven't been as popular on the market, early in the market, as many people thought they would be. But, one thing, I wouldn't be surprised if Tanner Scott lands in Atlanta. The Braves have been quiet so far this year as well. They need some bullpen help. We know Alex Anthopoulos is one of the best in the game. He gets things done. They know as well as anybody, you win with pitching. And, I think that's a good match there. Now, there are other teams, a lot of other teams obviously are talking to Tanner Scott, Boston, Baltimore, the Mets, others. I think Atlanta's a really good fit.
The polar bear, Pete Alonso, where's his next igloo going to be?
Oh boy. Yeah, he kind of hurt himself by turning down that contract a while back, from the Mets, the extension. But I still think he'll end up back with the Mets, maybe not for the money he wants, but I think they'll figure something out, because I don't see a lot of other landing spots right now for first baseman. I mean, Toronto keeps trying to spend money, and nobody wants to take their money.
They're
for
like
the
the San
past
Francisco Giants of the American League.
They are. So, I mean, they could maybe Toronto sneaks in at the end or something, but I still think he makes the most sense for the Mets. The Mets fans love him. He's become an icon for the Mets. I think he deep down wants to stay with the Mets. But his agent is Scott Boras, and as we know, Scott tries to get the most money. It doesn't, sentiment and emotion don't play into it. He's had a very good track record over the years getting money for his players. And, the big problem right now, I think, is, there's a lot of people out there that think that he's using the old Prince Fielder contract in Detroit as a con for Alonso. And whether that is, A, true or not, and B, realistic or not, hard to say. But I don't see him getting that kind of money. Anyway, Alonso, I think, makes so much sense with the Mets.
All right. Where are we at with the book that's about ready to come out?
Publication May 13th. So it's a little bit of ways yet, but yeah, we're working. I think the book editors reached out to some people for, we sent some advanced copies out to some early people that the editor's hoping maybe you'll be nice enough to write a nice, if they like the book, a nice blurb or two for the, the back of the, the back cover of the book. Sometimes they have blurbs on them. And we're talking about that right now. Last few edits of the manuscript, that gets locked up by early February. And yeah, after that, they're going to figure out how they, what the best sales and marketing plan is, and they'll loop me into that. And it comes out on May 13th. Skipper, why baseball managers matter and always will, talking about the job from the late 70s to today, what it was then, what it is now, how we got from then to now, why we got from then to now. And as you know, I've interviewed probably 200 or so people for the book, focused on a handful of people, a lot of managers from Dusty Baker to, to Tito Francona to, everybody between Sparky Anderson, Dusty Baker. I think I mentioned Dusty. Anyway, it was a fun project to do, and I'm excited. I hope people like it. I'm excited for it to come out.
Scott, we're only, today's January 10th. We're only basically 30 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting.
Yeah, that's to me the sure sign of spring. When I lived in Michigan, people used to say, when you spotted the first robin come back and migrate north, that's when spring begins. To me, it's pitchers and catchers.
Oh, sounds great. Hey, have a great weekend, and thanks so much for all your great baseball thoughts.
All right, Coach. My pleasure. Take care, my friend. Talk soon.
There you go. One of the best in the business, Scott Miller, national baseball writer, does a lot of stuff these days for New York Times, and is getting ready to have his second book come out. Wow, a lot to talk about when we're talking about the Padres. My take on this thing with the Padres, because I know I've had so many people reach out to me since Monday. I was on Roger Lodge, who's up on the radio station, the Angel station. He reached out to me the other day and had me on his program. And, I talked to several people around the country and done podcasts and done some radio interviews. And at the end of the day, I don't know where this is going to go. I like Seidler. I've been in her presence a few different times over the years. Seems to be a lovely lady. I don't know all the inner workings of the Padres. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I do. I don't know the other Seidler brothers. I know Tom, and I think very highly of him. At the end of the day, I work on my own family trust and all that, and it's pretty much laid out. And one of the things you do, and I'm sure Peter Seidler did, was continue to update his trust. And Peter was a 2-time cancer survivor, and he wasn't in the best of health. And I'm sure he's a very, very smart man, as we all know. I'm sure he had it pretty much laid out. Now, the brothers that are involved in the lawsuit, Matthew and Robert, they're probably pretty good businessmen, I would think. And I would think they would follow the letter of the law, but I don't know. That's why Seidler filed this lawsuit, and we'll see where it goes. It should be, for me, if it's on paper, it should be pretty cut and dry, but we know once you get litigators involved, you never know what can happen. So we'll see where it goes. Hopefully it doesn't affect what the Padres are able to do, and hopefully AJ is able to find us a left fielder, a catcher, and a couple of starting pitchers and go from there, and maybe fortify the bullpen, definitely add some bench strength. But that's where the Padres are at right now. So we'll see where it goes. This could be a long